Hey, good morning, Pastor Steve here. I was reading Job 2:13. Now, keep in mind, Job has just suffered a great deal of loss, as most of you know. In Job 2:13, it says his friends came, and it says they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spoke a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was great. Someone has said, if you can't improve on silence, then do not try. In chapter 4 of Job, the friends who had done so well up until then shattered the comforting silence with a multitude of words. I confess that there are times that I too have shattered the silence with words that would have been better left unspoken. Once in a while, I get it right. In my pastoral internship, I was called for my very first time to attend a home after the death of the husband. This dear widow was sitting there, and frankly, it wasn't my wisdom. I just didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say. And I sat there quietly. I said, I'm sorry, and then I just sat there. You know what? After the funeral was over, she came up to me and gave me a hug, and she said, I just wanted you to know that the most comforting thing to me was when you just sat with me quietly. Sometimes you get it right, even if it's by accident. So Benjamin Franklin said, remember not only to say the right thing in the right place, but far more difficult still to leave unsaid the wrong thing at the tempting moment. But there are times to speak as well. In this current crisis of racial division, no matter who seems responsible in your mind, we need to remember these words. Albert Einstein said, if I were to remain silent, I would be guilty of complicity. Our God created us to be one race, humanity. Paul's preaching at Athens, if you remember in Acts 17, from one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. He marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their land. The first thing to understand in this discussion here is that there's only one race, the human race. Caucasians, Africans, Asians, Indians, Arabs, and Jews are not different races, but rather different ethnicities of the human race. All human beings have basically the same physical characteristics, with variations, of course. Most importantly, all human beings are equally created in the image and the likeness of God in Genesis 1. God loved the world so much that he sent Jesus to lay down his life for the world. The world includes all of those ethnic groups. As believers in Christ, we're called to be one body. I like what Steve Brown says in One Body. It's not us and them. He says, when I cry, you should taste salt. So we need to really try, do the proper research, study what causes the division, ask a friend of a different race, and don't wait for someone else to fix the issue. Begin to look at your own heart. It's out of the heart, right, that these issues come. It's easy to point to the explosive anger of some when they grow tired of being constantly discriminated against. Instead, let's do our part to build bridges and not walls. Do I understand the plight of my brothers and sisters of color? No, I can't really. I can't understand. I haven't experienced it. Have I ever been singled out and looked at as a criminal because of what I looked like? Well, there was one time on my bike. I was going through this small town, and I had the colors on the back of a Christian motorcycle club that I rode with. And as I came through town, all of a sudden the cops caught my colors and whipped around and followed me out of town just because. But that's not the same thing. That's a minor thing. It's not the same issue. But Jesus commands us to love one another as he loves us in John 13:34. If God is impartial and loves us with impartiality, we need to love others. That means to do the very same right thing for others with the same high standard that Jesus teaches. Matthew 25, whatever you do to the least of these as brothers, you do to him. If you treat a person with contempt, you are treating God with contempt. You are mistreating a person created in the image of God. You are hurting somebody that God loved and for whom Jesus died. So it's a time to speak. The preacher said, and a time to be silent. Listen, make sure you know the difference, and don't be quiet. Don't be quiet when it's time to speak either. You ponder that, Pastor Steve.